Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give folks another minute or two to join us this morning. So just we'll begin promptly at 10 o'clock. So that's just a few minutes from now. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. It looks like we have a nice crowd with us. Just a couple of house cleaning items. We encourage everyone to ask questions during our presentation. If you'll note at the bottom of the screen, there's a place where you can type those in. We have set aside time at the end of the presentation to answer as many questions as we can. If we miss your question, we will do our best to get you an answer following the conclusion today. Last note is we are recording today's webinar, and we'll get it posted to our cyber page at www.iiaofil.org. We'll try and get that done within the next 24 hours. You'll have access to it if you'd like to review any of that. We expect today's webinar to run approximately 20 to 30 minutes. So let's get started. Title of today's webinar, Protecting Your Agencies, and as well as your personal future financial survival. Will your agency exist 5 years from now? To help us with our webinar today is Bill Larson of NetGen Data Security Consulting and Profit Protection Risk Management Consulting. Bill and I will present a series of 4 webinars on this subject, including a 2-hour course at this year's convention. The 2 hours will include a panel discussion, which will include representation from agent carriers and claims adjusters. As a reminder, this year's convention is in Springfield again at the Crown Plaza, October 1st through October 3rd. Bill has worked closely with IABA and ACT over the past 7 years and was a major contributor in the developing ACT Cyber Guide 2.0 and presented this program at the National ACT meeting in Chicago. Bill's also a member of the IABA ACT Security Issues Work Group. Bill was the chairman of the IABA ACT KIPA Work Group, which led the study of compliance and liability exposures associated with data privacy laws for insurance agents. And finally, Bill also co-authored articles on data privacy security for various insurance publications and worked with other state associations on again, the webinar today, avoid an agency and personal financial disaster. make cybersecurity your agent's priority? Will your agency exist in 5 years as it exists today? This sounds very scary, but with the potential financial exposure the agency has to data breach, this is a very real possibility and an urgent issue which must be addressed by every agency and agency owner. This financial exposure needs to be addressed, and your association needs to help agents understand the potential loss. After identifying the loss, we need to provide you with the tools to protect agencies from the potential financial fallout from this exposure. Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America, through the Agents Council for Technology, has determined that the potential exposure to its members was so severe that they developed the Agency Cyber Guide 1.0, which has now been updated to the Agency Cyber Guide 2.0. The introduction states the following: handling sensitive information is now one of the most critical responsibilities faced by the modern insurance agency. Independent insurance agents and brokers must properly collect and protect sensitive client information every day. This means they must comply with state and federal regulations, which, with regards to privacy laws, as well as adhering to customer service best practices standards. These acts and regulations can be difficult to address given the multifaceted responsibilities agents encounter daily, but it must be a priority. We will be using the Agency Cyber Guide 2.0 as a learning tool throughout today's webinar. Bill, would you like to take it from here and discuss some of the real problems faced by agents avoiding the issue of cyber liability?
Hey, thanks, Brian. In developing this series of webinars and the CE programs, IIAI's goal is to help you fully understand your agency's financial requirements. I believe that your compliance with the current data privacy laws and with your carrier contract requirements will determine your future personal financial well-being as well as that of your agency. So, to help you understand the ramifications of not being in compliance, we will discuss some real-world problems and how these problems would affect your agency in the event your agency is not in compliance. So, in the real world, we're always trying to secure new business and also trying to keep clients that we have. We believe that compliance with the current data privacy requirements will be a major factor in retaining your client base both now and in the future. So in the real world, what would happen if a competitor met with one of your largest clients and discussed the following? First, they showed them that there were federal and state laws which mandate that an agency must protect their clients' private information in a very specific manner, and that the agency would be in violation of these laws if they were not in compliance with the requirements of how their clients' information must be secured. Next, they showed them that the contracts all agents have with insurance companies also require that the agency must be in compliance with these laws. Then, they demonstrated that their agency was in compliance with these laws by showing your client that they'd purchased a program, say, such as NetGen, which helps their agency to develop their compliance programs, or that they had developed the required compliance information themselves, listing the specific required procedures which they put in place for their clients' protection. Then they showed them that they'd purchased a data breach insurance policy, such as Evolve, Beasley, or Coalition, to protect their clients' private information in the event they were breached, or that any company to which they sent their clients' information was also breached. They stated that if their agency did not purchase this type of policy, that their clients' information could be used by criminals, and that their clients would ultimately be responsible for all the losses resulting from this information being stolen from your agency. They then gave your client a checklist of questions to ask you as to what procedures your agency has in place to protect their personal information, and how your agency is in compliance with these laws, and also in compliance with your insurance company language in their contract. how would you answer your clients' questions to demonstrate to them that you are in compliance with these laws and contracts and that you have taken the proper steps to protect their personal information? Is it possible that you could lose your clients to your competitor if these procedures were not in place? So let's think about it. How easy would it be for your competitors to take your clients if you're not in compliance? What would happen to your agency and your client base if your clients discovered that your agency was not properly protecting their personal information, that your agency was in violation of both state and federal laws and the requirements as stated in your company contracts? Will you be able to show them that you've purchased a data breach policy and either purchased or developed the required compliance program to protect their personal information?
As we stated previously, the most critical issue for agencies to assure their future financial survival is to begin the implementation process of the mandated federal and state privacy laws and begin the compliance process, which is required in most
Sure.
every
If you
agency
review your agency
company contract.
contracts, which again most
Bill, can you
people
talk
don't, they
about the
sign them
company
and they
contracts
go
for a
in the
little bit?
file. But if you review the contracts, you will see that these contracts have mandated compliance with federal and state laws. These agency contracts are signed both corporately and personally, and stating that you must be compliant with these laws, and in the event of a loss, that you will reimburse the carrier, the insurance company, for all costs they've incurred due to your negligence of noncompliance. This would most likely also result in a huge financial loss for both you and your agency, in addition to being with the probable loss of your company contracts. Also, it's important to remember that if the carrier decides to audit your agency and noncompliance is discovered, this could also result in the loss of the carrier contract to your agency. The principal law requiring compliance is called the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, or GLB. Now what we'll do, we'll clarify GLB and we'll provide you with a thorough understanding of how GLB compliance is integral to your insurance agency's continuing profits as you know it today. Again, non-compliance could lead to potentially unlimited liability to you and your agency, and in addition to the loss of your company contracts. You and your agency are also open to potentially unlimited financial exposures for all the losses incurred by your companies and your clients due to your negligence of being non-compliant with these federal and state privacy laws. So as Brian stated, IIABA Act determined that the risk was so severe to their agents that CyberGuide 1.0 and ultimately 2.0, and we're now working on 3.0, which will be done hopefully by the end of the year. These were created to help agencies to begin their compliance process and to begin to mitigate their financial exposure associated with being non-compliant with the existing data privacy laws. So we'll discuss more on this shortly. Brian read a part from the IIABA Act CyberGuide 2.0, which states that handling sensitive information is now one of the most critical responsibilities faced by the modern insurance agency, and that it must become a priority to implement these laws into the agency. Brian is now writing a series of articles on cybersecurity, which began with the July and August Insight issues and will run through the end of the year.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. The 6-month series talks specifically about the CyberGuide 2.0, which Bill is going to talk about a little bit more in the next few minutes. I hope everybody gets a chance to review these articles with their entire agency staff to help increase the level of understanding of the CyberGuide and how important it is for agencies to implement this guide. Bill, in the event an agency would choose
Sure.
to
These will break
self-insure
down
their
into first and third
cyber
party
exposure,
expenses, but
would
the
you
first
review the
party
costs an
expenses
agency could
are
incur?
when an agency's data is compromised, it's legally required to take action which can result in significant expenses for the agency. What we'll do, we'll list 10 major first party expenses and then explain them in much more detail again in the next webinar. Now, first, they will incur legal expenses. Second, computer forensic expenses, then notification, call center expenses, crisis management, public relations expenses, cyber extortion expenses, data restoration expenses, business interruption expenses, dependent business interruption expenses, fraudulent transfer of funds, and possible ID monitoring and protection expenses. Now, the third party expenses they would incur are associated with regulatory compliance as well as defending and settling cyber related lawsuits. So the first set of expenses are privacy and security related litigation expenses. These are lawsuits filed by customers or employees. Next is regulatory fines. These are fines by state and federal regulators. Then we have payment card losses. Now, most agencies don't take credit cards, but if they do, they're exposed to fines and penalties from the credit card companies and must be compliant with all the PCI requirements, such as the PCI mandated annual audit, among others. Now, as a result of the hold harmless and indemnifications sections of agency carrier agreements, which again all agents have signed, the agency could be required to pay the following costs and expenses, which would be in addition to the direct costs and expenses incurred by the agency in defense of their actions. So first, they will pay all costs of the investigation by the carrier, both of the agency as well as the costs of possible national investigations, since the breach would have originated at that agency level. Next, they will pay all costs of the required notifications which are incurred by the carrier. Then they will pay all costs of attorney's fees which were incurred by the carrier. They will then pay all defense and liability costs incurred by the carrier. And finally, they will pay any additional costs incurred by the carrier as a result of the agency's signed agency agreement.
Bill, would you give us a brief description of the Cyber Guide
Sure. Again,
2.0 that
Cyber Guide
IDA
2.0 and ultimately
has developed
3.0,
for its
but we'll talk
members,
about
as we
2.0,
talked about previously?
is the Agents Council for Technology, which we'll refer to as ACT, in cooperation with its independent agents distribution entities, has created the Agency Cyber Guide for the Big I. Now, this includes a list of the major federal and state regulations with clear descriptions and resources to address each one of these. Following are 12 cybersecurity regulations that are required by GLB. These must be developed in a very precise and specific manner in order to qualify the agency to become compliant. So the agency must have first a proper risk assessment program, then secondly a written security program, third an incident response plan, fourth proper staff training and monitoring, fifth vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, sixth access control protocol, seventh a written security policy for all third-party service providers. This is extremely important. Encryption for non-public information. Ninth, designation of a chief information officer. And 10, have developed proper audit trail. Number 11, they must implement multi-factor authentication. And 12, a proper procedure for disposal of non-public information. So again, all 12 of these items just listed will be fully described in the next webinar, which will go into much more depth in discussing an agency and an agency owner's financial exposure to a data breach.
Thanks, Bill. Just as a side note, everybody, the 6 articles I'm writing for the magazine takes two of these steps each month and provides an in-depth look with the referencers to help agents complete the 12 steps in the cyber guide. So between these webinars and the 6 magazine articles, by the end of the year, one little bit at a time, you should have completed the cyber guide. So I encourage you to, again, attend webinars and look at those magazine articles that I put together every month. So the upcoming list of webinars series to help educate agencies. The next one is a review of an agency's financial exposures to data breach, and this will be an in-depth look. That's on September 5th. An in-depth review of agency contracts, as we talked about. That'll be September 18th. The third one is our premier convo in Springfield, Plaza, October 1 through the 3rd, which will include the panel discussion. And our last final is how to use the Cyber Guide 2.0, and that's on October 16th. So I hope you'll join us for those next 4 presentations, which will provide the in-depth look at the Cyber Guide and those 12 steps. As I mentioned earlier, first part of the program, we'll have time to review some of the questions that have come in during the program. If we're not able to get to all the questions, we will contact you with answers to those questions. So let me jump in, Bill, to some of the questions that we've received. The first one is, if my agency is having trouble establishing a security
that was
plan,
good.
does the association
Obviously,
have any
for what we do
resources to help?
with NetGen, that would be my first answer. But again, let me go over that thought process with NetGen and why it may be an option for everybody. NetGen Data Security provides you with all the items and the implementation process required for agency compliance. So again, all of this is laid out in a compliance toolkit. Now, the 12-step process we just went through, when fully implemented, will provide the agency with compliance. So again, those who tried to develop the required compliance information for themselves took a significant amount of agency time, which is obviously lost profit to the agency. And to me, it would seem that about $700 cost for the NetGen program would be a bargain. But again, I guess it depends on what price you put on your employees and agency time.
Okay, thanks. And in addition, we've got our cyber web page on our site, so they can go to our website, click on the cyber link, and there's resources there as well. Let me look through here. Here's one. With regards to the contractual agreement between my agency and the carrier.
Okay, well, obviously we talked about this, but again, you signed the contract. So every agency contract is signed both corporately and personally, that you accept responsibility and that you will reimburse the agency as it's structured. One that comes to mind, there's a very prominent national company that has put out producer agreements to the agency contract. And I'll go over a couple of these real quick because it defines where this listener is trying to go. It says, the producer will agree to comply with obligations and applicable federal and state and privacy and data security laws, rules, and regulations. And then it also says further on down in that they will implement without limitation access to documentation of their cybersecurity programs. They must have written policies and procedures demonstrating their respective compliance with penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, audit trails, access privileges, application security risk assessments, third-party service providers, and factor authentication, and within these are warranted, and then the agency has to sign it. So again, this is pretty severe, but again, the agency owner and the agency has signed this saying that they will put this in place. If they don't, obviously they're drawn into it. And the worst case scenario, or the easiest case scenario, is that your contract says you will comply with all state and federal laws, and then it defines the reimbursement to the carrier if you're not compliant with that. So yeah, you sign the contract.
Yeah, and I've noticed in some contracts I've seen with wholesalers, brokers, what have you, that those agency contracts
Yes, I have. Yeah, I mean, again,
include
what's happening
are
is
starting
that
to
there's so
include
much
that type of language as
information
well.
that the
Have you
agency
seen that?
holds. Okay, if that is out there, legal for all these companies have come back in and determined that that has to be the company, insurance company of the world, have to be protected from a breach at the agency level. So if the agency is non-compliant, hasn't done what it's supposed to do, it goes forward, the company is going to come back, obviously punish the agency by making them pay for the costs of the breach and reimburse the carrier, which would obviously bankrupt the agency.
Yeah, so I think, within the agency environment, probably the three areas that are most common are the carrier contracts, the wholesaler broker contracts that they do business with, and then the last one is their agency management system contracts. Whether whatever vendor it is,
Yeah, and
they
again, with
contain
the
similar
agency
language as well.
management
So I
contracts,
think they deal with
we've
that
talked
from
to a number
three
of
different
agencies, and they
aspects
said,
every
well,
day.
hey,
So
I don't have a problem. All my stuff goes in the cloud. It goes to the agency management system. I'm not affected. Well, yeah, you are. Because again, what you've said is that you're responsible for all this under the GLB law. Okay, now if you read your agency management contract, nowhere in that agency management contract does it say that they will be responsible for your information if the breach occurs on your site. So it then definitely rolls back downhill to you, and you become responsible for the loss that occurred, say, in the cloud. So, yeah, you must make sure that you've got this thing covered.
yep, I couldn't agree more. It looks like we're running up just about on our 30 minutes, so I think we got time for one more question, because I think this might actually be a yes or no
Unfortunately,
question.
no. GLB
Are
is a
there any
national law.
exemptions in GLB for the
Everybody is
smaller
included in it. Now,
agencies?
states can modify that law above that, but GLB is the floor. So everything in GLB must be adhered to. If the states want to make it tighter than whatever GLB defines, they can do that. But no, everybody is responsible for being compliant with this. There's no exclusion for smaller agencies, and you know, that's just kind of the way it is.
Okay, appreciate the help today, Bill, and I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their morning to be with us today. If you need any additional information, you can contact Bill at NetGen and look at his compliant kit on our website, iiaofillinois.org/cyber. If you have any questions, you can contact either Bill or myself with the information up there. And again, I look forward to being with you again at our next webinar on September 5th. So thanks everybody. Have a wonderful day.